I
not a
might
problem.
not need too much introduction because, yes, so welcome everyone to the Young and Brave Mentoring Program. I always enjoy to come together to learn with you all. Thank you so much for taking out the time to be here today. We're glad to have you. Today is another day. We are going to be looking at another important topic, a live topic, a topic that we always deal with every second of our life, and that's decision making. Actually, there are two topics somewhat. I don't know how Remy you're going to handle it, but I trust you're going to handle it well because they are two different topics. The reason I said so was because there was a time Mrs. Lee, she was dealing with self-confidence, self-awareness, and so these are different topics that I had to make her deal with different topics altogether. But I think I'm doing the same thing to you, but I trust that you're going to do justice to it. So today we are going to be looking at decision-making and conflict resolution. In fact, we all make decisions every second of our life. You made a decision to be here today. That's decision-making. Every segment of our life, we make every section of every time of our lives, every second I meant to say of our lives, we make decisions. And the thing about decision is that it either makes our destiny or it destroys our destiny. Every decision that you make in life affects you. There are consequences for the decisions that we make in life. And that is why we always ask people, it's very important that you make the right decision. For you to be successful in life is dependent on the decisions that you make. Decision is a process of making choices by identifying a decision, gathering information, and assessing alternative resolution. So in other words, you don't just wake up one day and just make a decision. You have to be informed. You have to have the information. You have to have the right knowledge to be able, we always call it informed decision. And we always encourage people not just to make any decision, but make informed decision. So in other words, you have to gather your thoughts, you have to gather the right information to be able to make the right decision, and also look at weigh all your options. I like the way Wikipedia define it. It defines it as, it says decision making is regarded as the cognitive process resulting in the selection of a belief or a course of action among several possible alternative options. I really like that because it said you're going to select among several positive options. So you have so many options. In life, we have so many options regarding that decision you want to make. There are options, good and bad, but you have to select, you have to choose. So in other words, if you choose wrongly, you make the wrong decision and it affects you negatively. But if you choose wisely, you make the right decision and it leads you in a positive path to fulfill your purpose and your destiny. And that is why we chose to look at it, because decision making is a huge step that we need to take, process that we need to undergo in life. You women are great women, and I know you've got great purposes and great destinies to fulfill. However, for you to be able to fulfill it, a determinant factor is the way that you make decisions. And that's why I want to look at it today. We want to empower you to be able to make right decisions in life so that you can fulfill your great purpose and your great destiny. So using a step-by-step decision-making process helps you to make more deliberate, thoughtful decisions. It helps you by organizing relevant information and defining your alternative. Then the second topic, they're a little bit intertwined, because while you're making decisions, you make decisions about conflicts. In conflict, when you're having conflict in your relationships, you make decisions, right? And also, when you're trying to resolve the conflict that you're in, you're going to have to make decisions. When you're making decisions, you encounter conflict that you have to overcome. So they're kind of like, there's an intersection. That's the word they always use to when two things are kind of like linked together. So there's an intersection there. So I believe she's going to do justice to, it's not what she's going to be teaching us today is not going to be only limited to conflict, how to make decisions in conflict or how to resolve conflict when you're making decisions. No, it's decision making in all ramification of your life That is what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be dealing with how we can make decisions in every aspect of our life. And when we're looking at conflict resolution, of course, we all know what conflict resolution is when two or more people come together to find a peaceful solution to an existing challenge and existing problems. So also, and we all know that we are relationship beings in life. You have a relationship with your parents, brothers, sisters, husbands and wife, at your workplace. In relationships, there are always conflict. So today we're also going to learn what is the best practices, the best way to resolve the conflict that we experience in our relationship. Conflict is inevitable. For sure, there will be conflict. Why? Because they're two different human beings with different perspective, different mindset, different beliefs, different values coming together, wanting to work together. For you to be able to work together, you have to come to make a decision. You have to come to a compromise, or you have to come to an agreement. And in order for you to come to an agreement, sometimes it involves conflict. Every relationship involves conflict at one point in time or the other. But today, Reverend Mimi is going to help us and learn how to resolve the conflict. Relationships are very, very important. Nobody gets anywhere in life without relationship. You cannot fulfill your purpose, your destiny without relationship. Relationships are very, very important, but handling those relationships is what we're going to look at today when there is conflict. So today I'm going to read a little bit of her bio for those of us that were not here when she was with us 2 weeks ago, and she did an amazing job. So for those of us that were not here, I'm just going to read a little bit of her bio so you can get to know a little bit about her. Reverend Mimi was born into a Christian family, and she gave her life to Christ at a young age. Her mother modeled a part of Christianity for her and her siblings. She also instilled the value of hard work and education. She's an experienced professional in the research and development, medical device, pharmaceutical, and retail industries since 2001. She has worked at companies such as Bio-Techne, AbbVie, Abbott, and ALDI Corporate. She has several certifications such as LSSGB, which you tell us, I don't know the meaning of all these your acronyms, lady, but ITIL, PMP, and is currently sorry, my phone. Please bear with me, she needs to log in. I will, just a moment, I'll get to her. Sorry about that, and I should switch off my phone. Okay, there we go. So sorry about that, such as LSSGP, ITIL, and PMP, and is currently a consultant at her founding company, Paragon One Data, where she assists businesses and organizations in process improvement initiative. She was ordained as a pastor at Church on Fire International in October 2014, then a reverend in October 2020. She was previously an active member of the Speak the Word Church International and Living Word Christian Center while living in Minnesota. She has a passion for helping women in stressful situations, particularly those who experience emotional and physical abuse. She is the founder of the nonprofit organization Haven for Divine Restoration, with a mission to empower women in need and rebuild lives through education and mentorship, thus growing self-worth and esteem of women to create empowered, confident, and assured women. She believes in the sanctity of marriage and desires to see the restoration of healthy and faithful marriage relationships worldwide. And championing a solid premarital foundation, she became a certified prepare and reach facilitator. So let's welcome Reverend Mimi as she takes over to help us with the best practices for decision-making and conflict resolution. Over to you, my lady. I am going to send the link.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Perfectly well.
Okay, so can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. I'm going to be looking this way because I have the monitor this side.
No worries.
So I'm going to be talking about best practices for decision-making and conflict resolution. This will be under the umbrella of my company, the founding company, because I believe these topics, besides in your personal lives, these topics will take you far in your business, leadership, and career lives. So that's why it's under this umbrella, unlike the other one that I talked about for gender violence, which is more under the nonprofit, which fit more in that one. So what will be our agenda today? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot to add. Sorry about that. We're going to talk about types of decision-making, the 6 C's of decision-making, types of decisions, the steps to effective decision-making, and the decision-making skills for successful leaders. Then we'll talk about conflict resolution. You might wonder, why am I focused more on decision-making? Because number one, if you make good decisions, as Dr. Ude had said, you wouldn't have to deal with conflict resolution. All decisions that are made are choices. If you make the right choices, the right decisions, you most likely will not have to deal with conflict resolution. You most likely would have to deal with trying to fix issues that might come up. So that's why I'm going to focus a lot more on decision-making, because that's the foundation for you to avoid any type of conflict. So what is a decision? It's a conclusion or resolution reached after consideration. That means a thought process, an effort has to be put into getting these things done. It's the action or process of deciding something or resolving a question. It is decisiveness, which is the ability or tendency to make decisions quickly. Every good leader, which I'm sure all of us are aiming to be that, you want to be able to be decisive. Think quick on your feet. How can I make a choice between 2 or 3 or 4 or even many options? A decision has to be mostly between 2 or more options. How can I quickly analyze things and pick something real quick? And then finally, what is the decision? It's a formal judgment. That means once I've made a selection, that's it, it's going to stand. So that means I have to be careful what I do. What are the types of decisions we make? As a leader, decisions will be part of the responsibilities, especially if you want to be able to move an organization forward. Now, remember, our organization is not only a business or career where you work, it's also your house. It's your life. So if I'm going to be able to make decisions that will affect my life, I have to know the types of decisions that would be needed. There are strategic, tactical, and operational decisions. So for strategic, we have what terms them as strategic. Number one, they're long-term. So you have to be careful how you make those decisions. They're also very complex. That means they are intertwined with other decisions. If I select this option, how is it going to affect the other option? And also, it's made by senior managers. It's made by moms. It's made by dads. How am I going to select the school my child is going to go to? That's a long-term decision, and I have to make sure I'm very strategic about it. How close is it to my house? Or could it be, what's the school district? How is it rated? So things like that. A tactical decision, it's kind of like medium term. That means we can start and it can end, but it has a little bit of length to it. It might not be as strategic as a long-term one, but it still has some kind of length to it. It's less complex. And also it's made by middle managers. So maybe your teenage kid can make those kind of tactical decisions because they know it might affect the household, but it won't affect it that long. For instance, they might say, we want to select where we want to have dinner today if we're going to go out to eat. Okay, let the teenager select that. It doesn't really make a big difference in that. It's not going to really impact the house or the family, but it's still a decision that has to be made. And it's not as complex because something like selecting a house based on school district, that's going to be a long-term decision that would affect many people, which is, of course, the parents, the children. So tactical is not as crucial, I would say, as strategic decisions. Then operational, just the decisions that I make every day, that made every day. For instance, you have to clean your room. It's something that is an everyday thing. It's not going to affect a lot of kids. So it changes, it's simple, it's routine. So decisions, these are the 3 types of decisions that can affect an individual. Please pardon my voice. I'm getting over like a really bad cold. I didn't even work on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday because of this cold. Types of decision-making. One, there's a majority rule type of decision. And the second one is the consensus. So how it works with the majority, everybody, let's see what you think about things. Give us your opinions and we'll make a selection. Whoever selects the most or makes the most of this choice, that's what we're going to go with. And it's clear cut and it's not likely to be misinterpreted. So usually when you make a decision like that, that means it has to be really straightforward. There are no complications to it. It's very clear. It's very transparent. And most likely an error in a decision will not have bad effects. And most times when this kind of decision is made, that means people or the people in that group have discussed it and they've really weighed everything out. And they've now realized we need to find majority. That's why we have to take the majority rule vote. It's also limited in time frame. That means you have 1 day, you have 1 year, no, maybe not 1 year, usually it's a short of time frame. You have 1 week, you have a month to make this decision, but you have to put a choice in and it has to be within a certain timeline. And when you make a decision like this, where you say majority rules, most likely, when you say power in the group is basically balanced, it's mostly balanced. That means most people have equal authority to be heard. So when you say majority rules in an organization, maybe it might be between peers, it could be between upper management, it could be between middle management, but most of the time, it stays within that group of people. It doesn't usually go in between two, just because it's going to be majority rules. That means we've discussed all the pros and cons. We've listed them all out. Now we want to make a choice because we can't agree. And then we'll say, let's make that decision. The second one will be consensus rules. That means you talk it through until all agree. If we can decide on something, we will all keep at it until we agree. If I want to bring up a topic, I will lay out all the pros, lay out all the cons, give my reasons for why I want it to be. So basically, you're almost trying to convince people to accept what you're trying to say. You use it when all don't agree and the decision won't be successful or people try to get around it. So you're almost forcing the hand of people to select something because we have to move forward and something has to be entered in. When a group of people feel strongly about an issue and believe that a vote will minimize the importance, like, the first one was like a vote because it's like, okay, whatever, we'll just do it. And now they feel, no, we have to decide what we want to do. So that means consensus. We all have to agree. We all have to be on the same page. We all have to see the importance of this issue. And the time available to make a decision is unlimited. Remember I said the other one, there might be a little time frame. This one, it's like, we don't care how long it's going to take, but you're going to make a decision. The main goal of this one is we all have to agree with this final choice. And when this happens is also when power is unevenly distributed. So in this kind of situation, you might have upper management, middle, and the lower groups. And most times it's usually the upper management trying to, I don't use the word force, but trying to make others see their way of thinking and accept it. So usually you have that type of decision-making in a situation like that. So I don't know if any of you have been in situations of things like this. I know if you've been in ministry, sometimes you get this a lot because you're trying to make something pass. You want to buy in the vote. You want to buy in everyone. I don't want to say vote since the first one was using the term vote. So I will say you want to get the buy-in of everybody as much as possible. Maybe there's a building that the ministry believes would be a very good location that might help expand it. And you always have like a board of directors. One might feel strongly about it and 3 might feel no. So it's if the one that feels strongly about it truly believes in their decision, it's now their own responsibility to try and enforce the buy-in of the other three using this consensus rule. That means I'll give you as much time as you want, but we need to make this decision. Excuse me. Now we're going to talk about the 7 steps to effective decision-making. What are the things I need to do to make sure I make the right choices? Like we said, decisions are choices, basically. First is you want to identify the decision. The next, you want to gather the relevant information. The third is to also look at all the alternatives. Then also weigh out the evidences. Choose between alternatives. That means there should be other choices. You never put all your eggs in one basket. You have to have other options. Then number 6, which is very important, you act. You have to take action. Because some people, they make a decision, then they just sit on it. But it's not a decision unless it's implemented. Then number 7, review a decision and its consequences. So after you take action, sometimes you've implemented the decision, then you have to now look at it. You have to review what has that action cost, and how, if it's bad, how can it be fixed? If it's good, how can it be replicated? So that's what you always want to look at. So we're going to look at those step by step. You identify the decision. The first thing is you realize what you need to decide. You have to clearly define the nature of the decision you want to make. Why do I want to take that job? Why do I want to date that guy? Someone has asked me to marry him. Am I sure that's the best decision? What are the things about him or her? Well, I guess we're all women here. What are the things about him that is causing me to make that decision or make that choice? That's the most important. You have to find out, what is that decision I'm going to make? The next thing, you gather all the information. If I'm going to make that decision about that job or that man, what are all the things that are pertinent to that choice I make? What information is needed? What are the sources of information? How do I get it? It involves both internal and external work. That means internally, you have to think about it. You have to reflect over it. And then external, because you have to now start digging, looking at the choices outside. So for instance, a job. Why do I want this job? How is it going to change my life? What effect is it going to have on my family? Maybe it's going to give me more money. Okay, I'll take it. Now, if I take the job, how much are they going to pay me? I'll do my external review. So my decision of the first step of thinking about that decision is the internal part, amongst other things, of reflecting about why I want it. But now the external part is, how much are they going to pay me? What am I worth? How does this company typically treat its employees? What do they pay them? I go out there and I do the research. So it says it involves internal and external work. You have to actually dig in. You have to put some effort into it, because that decision you make is going to affect your life. The same thing with a guy. It's not enough for you to just meet him and say, oh, everybody says he's a nice guy. No, like, I'm from Nigeria. What they do, they call it quote unquote investigation. The families will go both look into each other's backgrounds. Who are these people? What type of people are they? What kind of marital history do they have? Are they known to always get divorced? My sister and I were just talking about it the other day. I know I mentioned in the last meeting we had, my grandma had a bad marriage, and her 5 daughters, she had 5 daughters, all except one, all had bad marriages and were all divorced, except one. When my sister wanted to get married, she was going to get married to a guy from a state where my mom was from. His family started asking, telling him, are you sure you want to get married to that family? Because they were doing their own external work and research. You know, they're known not to stay in their husband's house. They always get divorced. So this is all the external work they had to do, because they wanted to make sure whatever decision this man makes will not be detrimental to his future. So the same thing with us. Decisions we make especially long-term, which are what we talked about, strategic decisions, we have to make sure we do external work to make sure they will not affect us negatively in the future. The third thing is to identify the alternatives. If I want this job really bad, or if I want, there's a particular company I want to work for, what other option would I have of similar companies that would be in the same caliber? Why don't I look at it? Identifies several possible paths of action or alternatives. Use your imagination. Use additional information to construct new alternatives. Think of all the possible things you could come up with. Use your imagination. If I don't go with this company, which other company can I go with? Which one would give me remote work? Because I know most people now with this whole COVID pandemic, people are looking at remote work. Will I be open to one that will give me hybrid work? That means work 2 days a week at the office, 3 days from home? Or do I want strictly 100% remote? What are my alternatives? How do I look at it? Well, if I can get 100% remote, even if it's 1 day in office, it won't be too bad, right? That's as good as 100%. So these are all the things you look at. Now with the guy, what are the things about this particular decision you want to make about this particular person? What are the things about him, the qualities, the characteristics that I feel I cannot find with anybody else? You list them down. It's been said in relationships, you can never get 100%, never. It's impossible. Why? Because we're imperfect people. It's two imperfect people coming together to live a perfect life, or as close to a perfect life as possible. So what are the characteristics in this person that I feel I cannot find with someone else? Some people might be more superficial. Oh, he has to be 6 foot tall, 6 packs, and then he beats them up, you know? So you have to actually know what your values are and what you're looking for. What are you going to settle for? And what are things that you will not settle for? What are the must-haves, the can't do's, the deal breakers? You have to make a list and know what are the things you absolutely need in a job or a man that you will not compromise for. Or what are the things that you feel, you know, it's okay. Even if he doesn't have this, I'm okay with it. Some women will say, oh, he must be a millionaire, or he must make 6 figures. What about a man that might not even have a job when you meet him? But if he has a strong vision and he's willing to work hard and he's focused, dedicated, principled, and disciplined, you get married to him. Before you know it now, he's already a millionaire. But there's key things you have to look for and know about a person to make the decision. We're going to move to step 4. Where's my step 4? Excuse me. I'm missing step 4. Notes here. Okay, step 4. You have to weigh the evidence. I'm going to try and stick it in there. I need to see it. It's a little smaller so it can fit. Sorry about that. Okay, there we go. You have to weigh the evidence. Draw on your information and emotions.
Sorry, we don't see your slide anymore.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
that's
I
all
don't know
right.
what happened. I just added step 4 in here. So maybe when I was trying to add it, just kicked you off or something. Okay, do you see it? Okay, good.
Sorry, yes, perfect, yes.
Okay, good. You have to weigh the evidence. Draw on your information and emotions to imagine what it would be like if you carried out each of the alternatives to the end. Whatever thing I have listed, and you have to be thorough with this portion because you have to look at it through all angles. Remember, a decision is a choice and it can have lasting impacts. So you have to go through these steps to actually think about what you're going to do, or what you're going to say, or how you're going to change your life. It's not just something like we talked about the different types operational. It's just a day-to-day decision. It changes. It's not complex. It has no big impact. But when it's something strategic like a life partner, because whoever you get married to can really affect your success in life. The same thing with a job, the same thing with relationships. There's some people that have met people that have taken them through the wrong path, and they have cursed the day they ever met that person. We're talking about whether romantic or just regular relationships. There's actually some of my nieces right now, they met a girl who just led them down the wrong path, in the sense that made them become so rebellious, and they started challenging authority. But this girl has always had this problem. So I started talking to them recently, and they said they wish they never met this girl. It was just friendship, but it made them sow such bad seeds that some of them are reaping that today. Excuse me. So you have to be very careful who you let into your space. Be very careful who you give access into your life. Be careful who you give access into your heart, into your emotions, into your mind. So these are all the decisions. You have to weigh the evidence. What is the track record of this person? Look at their background. The same thing you would do a job. Do the same thing with any relationship that comes into your life. As you go through this difficult internal process, you begin to give favor to certain alternatives, those that seem to have a higher potential for reaching your goal. Finally, place the alternatives in a priority order based on your own value system. You see that again? Value is being talked about here. You have to have a value. You have to have a system. And I think we talked about it the last time also. Because if you don't know what you want for yourself, if you don't have a worth or value for yourself, anyone is going to, like, what's the word I'm looking for? They will evaluate you the way you present yourself. And that's the same type of worth they will place on you. So it's very important for you to have a value system, things you will not accept. So step 5, remember we talked about make a priority list of the alternatives. Now you're going to choose among the alternatives. Once you've weighed all the evidence, you have to select the alternative that seems to be the best one for you. Now it says one for you, not for me, not for anybody else, for you. And that all starts with your own values. What do you place as the highest priority? What are the things you will not compromise? Things you will not settle for? You have to have a value system. This choice in step 5 may very likely be the same or similar one you place at the top of your list at the end of step 4. Remember we said after you've evaluated all the alternatives, then you make a priority list. So which one fits the best and most for you? Take that. Now you've made that decision. Let's say I had an alternative list of 5. At the end of it, I ended up selecting maybe 3 after I evaluated everything. Now I've said number 3 is what I want. It's not enough to just sit there. I have to act. I have to take action. I have to implement it. You have to take a positive action to begin to implement the alternative you chose in step 5. And then once you do that, you review a decision and its consequences. After you've done that, you have to start reviewing. Has it met that need? Was it detrimental? Will I have to go back to one and start all over again? There's something in, okay, I know you always talked about those acronyms behind my name. So LSSGB is Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. So it's a system that is used, the quality system that is used, especially in manufacturing. So sigma is a number. You're trying to get as close to sigma as possible. And what that means is, in manufacturing, when they make or produce products, they have to check them for quality. How many of them have defects? Based on the number of defects per million is sigma. I think it might be either 4 or 6 per million is 6 sigma. But you're trying to get as close as possible to 6 sigma as possible. You're trying to get to the least possible amount of defects. So that's this. And another part of quality control and quality assurance is you're also doing something called Kaizen, which is continuous improvement. That means every time I'm implementing something, a process, a procedure, a system, how much am I improving it? You keep evaluating. You evaluate, you check for the defects, you address the defects, you fix them, then you go back again to evaluate. So I thought about that when we talked about if the decision has not met the identified need, you may want to repeat certain steps of the process to make a new decision. So you might have to go back to step 1. And that's the same thing with Kaizen. You might have to go back to the beginning again. But that's life. You want to try to get as close to sigma as possible. You want to try and get as close to less defects as possible. You want to try and get as close to, as possible to less errors. So you see, even though this has to do with work or career, sigma, but it applies to your life also. How close to being error-free can I be? Do I have to keep constantly improving my life? What are the characteristics in me I need to improve on to make me the best possible product? So these are all the things we think about. Now, there are 5 decision-making skills for successful leaders. And remember, being a head of a household makes you a leader. You have lives of people that are in your hands by the grace of God, that you're supposed to lead in the right direction. What are the decisions about me? What are the decisions I have to make about me that might affect these lives that God has entrusted into my hands? Or if it's a workplace, the same thing, these lives that He has entrusted into my hands. Or if it's ministry, the same thing, these lives that God has entrusted into my hands. What are the decisions I have to make to ensure their lives are not wasted? First thing, identify the critical factors which affect the outcome of a decision. Being a strongly skilled decision maker requires having excellent analytical and interpretation skills to determine the issues that must be addressed and accounted for in the deliberate and implementation stage. So, you have to be able to analyze. As a woman, I think we are given that skill naturally. It's called our intuition. Women are just naturally gifted. They just know what they just feel. And I think it's one of the secrets of what makes us some of the very good decision makers. We might not be able to explain it, but we just say, I feel it in my gut. I know when you go to the work, when you go to like career, it's not enough to just say, I feel it in my gut. They want to see like statistics. Show me why you feel it's going to work. Then when you're in ministry and you might be blessed with something called like prophetic gifts, you might not be able to explain it, but you just know because you just see. You just know because you feel it. But you have to be able to identify the critical factors that would affect the outcome of a decision. Second one, evaluate the options accurately and establish priorities. I know you always see the same thing, alternatives, options, because you cannot just have only plan A. If plan A fails, what are you going to do? You should always have a plan to fall back on. You should always have an exit strategy. If all fails, what do I do? If I lose my job today, what do I do? Do I have an additional source of income? Do I have savings? I know we're all supposed to have 6 months of savings. Naturally, everybody in their savings account should have 6 months. So that means anything that is needed to run a home, have 6 months worth of that in your savings account at all times. In the event something bad happens, you can survive. Well, I hate to use this word survive. You can thrive for 6 months without being affected. What are your options? Evaluate them accurately and establish your priorities. If I don't get this job, what else will I do? What are my priorities? Should I pursue ministry instead? What do I do? Then now, number 3, anticipate outcomes and see logical consequences. This is something people fail to do. Sometimes they might have just a one lane track mind. All I see is this, it has to work. And I know sometimes you see that with, I hate to say in the church, oh, it must work. It must work. I know there's faith, but we also have to look at alternatives. If this doesn't work, what am I going to do? You have to know outcomes, anticipate outcomes, so that if somebody reads the wrong play, I know like American football, if the play, let's say they say we're going to run the ball, but instead of running the ball, it's blocked. An alternative way, if we see there's no way for them to run the ball, look for those that are open and throw the ball instead. So either the run game or the throw game. But either way, you have an alternative so that if one is blocked, you know another way to get through. The main thing is that you want to try and get to your goal. The goal does not change. The goal does not change. But how to get to the goal, there should be many ways to get to that goal. That's just ultimately ways to be successful. Number 4, navigate the risk and uncertainty. Like we said, you're going to have many ways to get to the goal, but you have to weigh the risks. What I do right now with Aldi Corporate in COVID case management, we have to assess risk. Once we're evaluating the case, what are the risks? If this person is still at work, potential exposure, more people getting sick, you find out who have they talked to within the last 48 hours of symptoms, different ways of doing these things, but you have to evaluate the risks and uncertainties. In the event something happens, how will I be able to fix it? How will I still be able to achieve my goal? The focus is always the goal. It never changes, but the ways to get to it, multiple ways to get to it, that's what will make somebody successful. And then number 5, reason well in context, requiring qualitative analysis. You have to be able to analyze, interpret, and evaluate vital information as presented in charts, graphs, or tables. I like to write. So I think everyone, to be successful and to be a good leader, especially like in ministry and in your own personal lives, your own businesses, have like a vision board, have like a dream book, ways in which you want to achieve different things you want to envision about yourself, about your life. How do I want to change things? How do I want to achieve this goal? Have multiple goals. Use your imagination. God has blessed us with an imagination that has no limits, endless imaginations. Make sure you use them. Remember, it's the goal, but how do I get to it? There should be multiple ways to get it, because at the end of it, I want you to achieve it. That's always a take-home message. Then we're going to move on to conflict resolution. How are we doing for time? Okay, because I'm trying to be cognizant. I won't really talk much about conflict resolution because I think I've already built such a good foundation on decision making. So that way, conflict resolution will just be building on top of that. Excuse me. Conflict resolution is a way for 2 or more parties to find a peaceable solution to a disagreement among them. The disagreement may be personal, financial, political, or emotional. When a dispute arises, often the best course of action is negotiation to resolve the disagreement. Does everybody agree with that? You cannot go wrong with negotiation. You have to find ways to get your way, but at the same time, not make enemies. Some people are skilled at it naturally. They are good at always resolving conflict. And I believe in relationships, especially romantic relationships, in marriages, if it's ever going to succeed, is the skill of conflict resolution after communication. The next thing that makes successful relationships is conflict resolution. If they're able to have good communication, but they're not able to resolve conflict, it will be very difficult for that relationship to survive. And then if they're able to resolve conflicts, but are bad communicators, it will be hard. But I believe these two go hand in hand. Communication is the number one thing that leads to good, successful relationships. And I believe most times, if you are a good communicator, usually you should be able to resolve conflict better, because you're able to know the right things to say, how to present it, then when to present it also, because you have to do things, the right thing at the right time, not the right thing at the wrong time, and also the wrong thing at the right time. Those can be bad. There are 7 steps to conflict resolution. Identify the issues, be clear about what the problem is, understand everyone's interest, list the possible solutions or options. Again, we see options, evaluate the options, select an option or options, document the agreements, and agree on contingencies, monitoring, and evaluation. We're going to take those quickly, step by step. Step 2, we should have all here, 3, 5. Okay, I said 5, right? It's supposed to be 5. Just give me a second, please. Ah. Back to share. Okay, so these are supposed to be indented here because they're under this. Alrighty. Define the source of the conflict. Most times, people don't even know what the issues are. What you cannot define, you cannot fix. And most times, people don't even know what the issues are. So what is the cause? What's the root? Again, if we go back to quality control and assurance, there's something called root cause analysis. So you have to find out what is the problem. Where did it come from? How can I fix it? How can I make sure I remove the problem that I identify? And how can I ensure it doesn't happen again? So what is the problem? Root cause analysis. Root cause analysis. Get the information you need. Use a series of questions to identify the cause. again, in quality assurance, there's something called a fish diagram. So they would have a line in the middle, and they'll have arrows coming this way and arrows coming this way. I think they also call it something, is it Hishikama diagram or something like that? But it talks about the effects that are coming in and then the results of those effects. So what is the problem? So they do that to be able to identify what the problem is. So for instance, if they're trying to find out, we put food in the refrigerator after it's supposed to last for 5 days. I'm using my scientific background now, but after 2 days, we found out the food got bad. What happened? They will go back. Put the what are the different things that changed? What are the variables? Number one, the temperature went down. What caused the temperature to go down? There was a power trip or surge. When that happened, it made the temperature gauge go down. Okay, when the temperature gauge went down, it caused the temperature in the fridge to read 10 degrees below what it's supposed to be. And the type of food is only stable at blah, blah, blah temperature. So because it was under a certain thing, it got bad. They had to find out what the problem was. What is the source? Why are you all of a sudden mad at somebody? What happened? Find the source. If you're going to resolve conflict, you have to know what the problem is. Why are you upset? Number two, look beyond the incident. If you're going to solve this problem, if you are not able to go beyond it, you will not be able to fix it. You will not be able to fix it. Why? Because pain and hurt, if it keeps being remembered and recycled, it will cause bitterness, anger, and unforgiveness. So you have to be able to look beyond it. If you want to fix the problem, look beyond that problem. I know people say, I can forget, but I will not, I can forgive, but I will not forget. At that point, it doesn't matter, just look beyond it because we're trying to fix it. Then number three, request solutions. How can we fix what's going on? What can I do? What can you do? How can we agree? Because the whole thing is that, what are the options? If I bring something to the table, will you accept it? What are the things you will not accept? You have to bring it to the table. Especially in relationships, there's some relationships you don't want to lose. So do everything you can to preserve it. Next thing, identify solutions both disputants can support. What will you accept from me? And what will I accept from you so we can move past this? We have to come to that agreement. And finally is the agreement. I've brought this and you've brought this. Can we agree on it? Can we make peace? Because if we're going to move together, we have to agree. We have to be one. We have to be together. Sometimes a mediator might have to be brought in, but either way, anything that has to be done, make sure it is done. And that's the final thing I had. I was hoping to make sure I didn't go more than an hour. Next thing, if you have any questions, please go ahead and ask.
Awesome. I'm just going to stop recording.